We're going to look at how mitosis and meiosis, they sound very similar, how they're both similar and how they're different. So some things they both have in common, they both start with diploid cells. They both are forms of cell division, although the purpose of meiosis is to make or form the gametes, and it cuts the number of chromosomes in half as a result of two different divisions. Whereas in mitosis, we start with a diploid cell and we end up with two identical diploid cells. And this is usually for growth, for repair, and it will happen in the body cells, whereas this only happens in reproductive cells. Another difference is that mitosis or asexual reproduction, which is what it's associated with, will form identical cells. Meiosis forms different cells as a result of these two different reductions. And in fact, that's one of the reasons it happens, is to make the gametes. It's going to result in haploid cells, whereas, again, mitosis is going to result in diploid cells. This forms the gametes to be involved with sexual reproduction. And both of these go through PMAT. It's just that meiosis goes through PMAT twice. As far as any type of mutation that happens, if a mutation happens in mitotic cells, it's not going to be passed to the next generation. It's only going to affect this individual. It's mutations that happen in the gametes that can possibly impact the next generation if that gamete is involved in creating a new individual. As we review what possible mutations could happen, let's talk about some of our vocabulary. So we have the karyotype that you see here. And remember, this is just a picture of chromosomes of an individual. Humans have 23 pairs. The first 22 pairs are the autosomes, or the non-sex determining chromosomes. The last pair, there are the sex chromosomes. So for males, this is a male. This is an XY. For females, it's XX. Now, if you notice that the chromosomes that are paired up, these are called homologous chromosomes because they have the same information on them that you would find in this one from our mom and in this one from our dad. So those are homologous chromosomes. Some mutations that could happen. If we're looking at chromosomal mutations, we can have a deletion. So here's our normal chromosome. Notice that gene B is missing. You could have a duplication where you have an extra chromosome. You could have an inversion where when it breaks and reattaches, it does so, but in the reverse order. Or you could have part of chromosome 1 break off and reattach itself to chromosome 19 or something like that. And that's called a translocation. In non-disjunction during meiosis, where during anaphase they should go to opposite ends, sometimes they don't. So you can see here, instead of having 2 copies, if a gamete's formed with an extra copy, we end up with 3. So this is called trisomy. Or instead of 2 copies, if the gamete only ends up with 1, we call this monosomy. So Down syndrome is actually caused by trisomy 21. Cancer is uncontrolled cell growth. So when we look at the cell cycle and we look how the cells go through the cell cycle, sometimes if the regulators or the proteins that tell it when to start and stop are not working correctly, this can cause a cell to divide over and over again beyond what it needs to. And this is what causes tumors or cancer cells. Sometimes this is genetic, and sometimes it's because of radiation or exposure